Who was the person who yayed? Because you can always yay louder. It's okay. Thank you. All right. So thank you, everyone, and good evening. It's my great pleasure to welcome all of you to Doheny Memorial Library for the 2019 USC Libraries Scripter Ceremony. This is our 31st year. 31st year, yeah. Celebrating the coming together of the literary and cinematic arts, of recognizing the particular art and craft of transforming a written story into a visual one, and of honoring the USC Library's essential place in the intellectual, cultural, and creative life of the Trojan family. Whether it's your first scripter or your 31st scripter, I'm so grateful to everyone who has supported this meaningful, enduring Trojan tradition. Thank you all very, very much. We have a number of special guests with us this evening, and I'd like to introduce them as we begin this program. It's my great pleasure to welcome some of our USC trustees here this evening. Would you please stand as I call your names and remain standing so that we can recognize you as a group? Mrs. Michelle Dado-Engelman, who also serves on the USC Libraries Board of Counselors, and her husband, Roger. As a group, this never works. Every year I try as a group. Let's try again. Mrs. Kathleen McCarthy-Costlin, also a member of our Libraries Board, and her husband, Frank. You clapped for Michelle, you got to clap for Kathleen. And Life Trustee, Mrs. Lorna Reed, and her husband, Mr. Lorna Reed. I mean, Chuck. He just hates that. Please join me in welcoming our USC trustees and their guests. I know I'm going to have to pay for that check, but thanks for standing up anyway. Several members of USC Senior Administration and my fellow deans have joined us for Scripter's 31st birthday. Would you please stand as I call your names and remain standing so that, hell, maybe we can recognize you as a group. So, USC Vice Provost for Academic Operations, Mark Todd, and his wife, Michelle. Thank you. USC Associate Vice Provost for Academic Affairs, Robin Romans, and his wife, Mailu Yado. Dean Elizabeth Daly of the USC School of Cinematic Arts and her husband, James Hindman. And USC Associate Vice President for Development, Amanda Vaya. Please join me in welcoming members of USC's Senior Administration and their guests. The USC Libraries Board of Counselors has been an invaluable source of support for me, for our libraries, and for this event. Scripter most certainly would not have grown into a 3-decades-old tradition without the dedication and the vision of our board members, many of whom are here with us this evening. As I call your names, would you please stand and remain standing so that we can recognize you as a group? And I know you practiced so well the last time, I know we can do it this time. Mr. Joel Prell, Chair of our Board of Counselors, and his wife Cheryl. Mrs. Cynthia Vaseman and her husband Neil. Go ahead. Mrs. Linda Cassidy and her husband Dr. George Cassidy. Mrs. Patsy Dewey. Mrs. Carol Fox. Mrs. Ann Hill. Mrs. Gloria Kaplan. Dr. Julie Miller and her husband Marvin, Mr. Todd Oakham and his wife Lori, Mr. Glenn Sonnenberg, who co-founded Scripter in 1988 when he was only a babe of 2, and his wife Andrea, Mr. John Summers and his wife Leslie, and Mrs. Jennifer Sparks Taylor and her husband Topper. Please join me in thanking our board members. Now, many of our board members served on the committee that helped make this evening so special. And you may have noticed our decor is a little more bold than usual. And I'd like to give a special shout out to Michelle Engelman and Julie Miller for encouraging us to go bold this year. And finally, please join me in a rousing round of applause for Dr. Art Bartner and the Trojan Marching Band. It only took us 31 years to figure out that if we have a much better chance of beginning on time, if the spirit of Troy welcomes you to the room. And if we begin on time, the better our chances of ending on time. This year I stand before you and once again renew my vow that you will enjoy good food, you will enjoy good drink, you will enjoy good company, and we will be done by 10 p.m. Honest. Now, those of you who have attended Scripture in the past have heard me describe many times the reasons why this event is so important to USC and to our libraries. Chief among those reasons is that Scripture helps our students. Last year, for Scripture's 30th anniversary, we debuted the USC Libraries Book of Wishes. The book was the excellent idea of USC trustee and Libraries board member Michelle Engeman. Thank you, Michelle. Thanks to the generosity of the Scripture family, it helped us expand our laptop lending program run out of Levy Library. That service is ever more important as our students conduct more and more of their research online using our extensive collection of electronic resources. Now, the Book of Wishes returns this year in support of the laptop program and other library programs for first-generation college attendees. I hope you'll visit it if you haven't done so already. And just to remind you, if you haven't been able to find it yet, it's conveniently located on the way to the bar, with another station next to the bar, and one next to the other bar. There are two bars. There's a bar there, and there's a bar over there. There was also one next to the check-in tables outside. So some people last year said they couldn't really find the Book of Wishes. You really can't miss it this year. Honest. The Book of Wishes, our people, our collections, our beautiful and inspiring spaces like this room, everything we do helps every student in every school, in every discipline, achieve intellectual and creative excellence. And when you join us for this elegant and literary evening, you're supporting us in that vital work. This room is only one of the many beautiful spaces among our 23 libraries at USC. Our students, our faculty, staff, and guests visit our libraries millions of times each year, almost 3 million times last academic year. The learned elegance of this particular building, it captured the imagination of tonight's first honoree when he was a student of management at USC. Years later, when he and his family named the Doheny Library Dean Suite, he reminded everyone that he'd always said that Doheny Library is the best looking building on campus. And you really can't argue with him tonight. This very deserving honoree also has an endearing way of beginning letters to me with, "How is my very favorite librarian?" Now, I may be the only librarian that he knows, but I do like the idea that I'm his very favorite librarian. If you visited the Dean's Suite, you've seen his name proudly marking the entryway, and you know that I'm speaking of Dr. George E. Isaacs. George has supported the rise of USC since the 1960s, and much like a great library, his intellectual curiosity and philanthropic concerns reach across the disciplines. George has worked to help students and professionals succeed in management, finance, real estate, K-12 education, public policy, healthcare, and the arts. George is a proud veteran of the Korean War, a member of the Board of Regents, and a Foundation Fellow of Harris Manchester College at Oxford. And in his own words, he is a high-octane man who for half his life worked 16 hours a day buying and selling millions of acres of land. Many of us at USC are the beneficiaries of George's work ethic, and I'm grateful that the many thousands of students who study in these stately halls see the Isaacs name every day in this library. I know they take inspiration, as do I, from the generosity and Trojan spirit of leaders like George. I am so very grateful for the friendship and support of George and the entire Isaacs family, and I'm delighted that we can celebrate George this evening with all of you by awarding him the USC Library's highest honor, the Ex Libris Award. George has made his home in Wailea, Hawaii for many years and could not make the journey to be with us. George's commitment to USC is second to none, and I know that he'd be here if his health allowed. His son, Mark, himself a Trojan, has just hours ago flown in from Mexico to represent and help us celebrate his father. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Mark Isaacs to accept the USC Library's Ex Libris Award on behalf of our 2019 honoree, Dr. George Isaacs. Mark. To your dad.
Yep, be taking it to him myself.
There you go, thank you.
Good evening, I'm Mark Isaacs, the youngest of George and Shirley Isaacs' 3 children. My father's unable to travel due to medical issues. On behalf of the Isaacs family, I want to thank the U.S. Libraries Board of Counselors and Dean Quinlan for the honor of receiving the 2019 Ex Libris Award. My father, George Isaacs, is a longtime and enthusiastic supporter of the University of Southern California, including the libraries. Why the libraries? At one level, it's because from 1968 to the early 1980s, we lived in Honolulu next door to Larry Doheny and his wife Josh of the Doheny family, for which this magnificent building is named. My parents were already big fans and supporters of USC, but this strengthened their interest and commitment all the more. At another level, my father is intrigued with the internet and how books could instantly be available to people everywhere. Contemplating the entire contents of this great library, for example, being digitized and available online brings a great smile to my father. Another reason to support libraries is the big picture, that books deliver knowledge, joy, and understanding to the reader. Very few products in the world today can make that claim. Yet statistics are that 2 out of 3 adults will never read a book again after they complete their formal education. Our family's always shaken our head at this. This disconnect that books bring joy and understanding, yet the majority don't read books after college, is a quandary waiting to be addressed. Thanks again to the Board of Counselors and to Dean Quinlan. Our family truly appreciates receiving the 2019 Ex Libris Award, and always fight on. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mark. And please share my congratulations and gratitude with George and your family. When the smart and generous people on the library's board conceived of Scripter all those years ago, they brought to the task a respect and admiration for writers, a love of stories and storytelling in their many forms, and a drive to channel such respect and admiration into an event that would support the USC Libraries and our students for decades to come. And I think they succeeded wonderfully. Thank you, Lorna. And she's not even on our board. We could change that. A few years ago, the library's Board of Counselors decided to build upon the founding vision of Scripter and invite the authors and screenwriters of television programs into the Scripter family. This year, owing to a tie in the finalist round of voting, we have 6 excellent nominees for the 2019 Scripter Award for Television Adaptation, and it is my pleasure to introduce them to you tonight. The assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story, reveals an emotional sensitivity and historical complexity that complement familial drama and sensational headlines. It's a true crime story that's as thoughtful and specific as it is dramatic and binge-worthy. I can tell you that. It's binge-worthy. The Handmaid's Tale returns for a second Scripter nomination this year, adapting the story of June, Serena Joy, and the commander beyond the borders of the novel and exploring with ever greater urgency their pasts and futures in the Republic of Gilead. Nearly 2 decades after the events of September 11, 2001, the looming tower continues the vital work of adding context and insight to a tragedy that is at once personal and global, intimately emotional, and enduringly geopolitical. Patrick Melrose is a sharply funny portrait of a character, his history and his vices, who inspires as much concern and empathy as he does disdain and disapproval. The Southern Gothic tradition lives on in Sharp Objects as its writers craft a story of dense psychology, suspicion, and the burdens of secrecy in small-town Missouri. And A Very English Scandal adapts what became known as the Thorpe Affair into a swiftly paced, comedic, and moving story of affection, of conspiracy, and of the first member of the UK Parliament to stand trial for murder. Would the authors, writers, and everyone here who helped bring these sharp and stirring stories into the world please stand and accept our congratulations. Now let's enjoy some examples of your excellent work.
Versace. Buonasera.
This is my friend Andrew. Hi.
It's good to see you in San Francisco.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see the opera. I think it's time we had a contemporary designer working on it.
Have we met before?
Yes. Lago di Como. Garden party at your residence. I was by the shore admiring your view, and we exchanged a few words. You were most gracious. Of course, I remember it, but for you to remember it is very flattering.
Yeah, Lago di Como. That must be it. Yes. So, yes. Sunday, you are in New York.
My mother's parents are from Italy, from the south. Schillaci is their family name. Maybe you know them. My mother still feels a very strong connection to the country, but in truth, she's never been. Can you believe that? An Italian American that's never even seen her own country.
She never returned with you.
Honestly, I think she's scared. It's almost as if she wants to keep Italy only in her mind as this perfect place.
Well, all right.
Where were her parents born?
Palermo. They were born in Palermo. I'll have whatever he's having.
Commander Mackenzie! Mrs. Mackenzie! Nick! Alfred! Maybe they weren't here.
Oh, they were. You saw the tire tracks outside.
Panicking is not going to do us any good. We'll go home, make a plan.
I'm not leaving here without my baby.
We shouldn't be here. Someone might have seen our car. I'll make some calls. I'm sure Nick will check in soon.
I told you they were here, and they might still be here.
Fine. We'll look. But quickly. If they've gone, we're only wasting time.
Morning, fellas.
Hey, morning, John.
Another day in paradise.
That's one word for it.
crash by what's thought to be a jet plane, possibly a 737.
Single file. Follow me. Follow me.
I want this plane in the air now. No one's heard from John O'Neill? I'm still trying to reach my mom. New York cell towers are jammed up. He was there, you know? I know. The South Tower of the World Trade Center has just been hit. Another plane. Let's go, people. Everyone on the plane now. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Oh, Patrick, bang on time. Just like your father. He's very, very proud of you, but I expect you to know that.
Never, man. I'm sorry for your loss. You must be feeling ghastly. What happened to your eye? Girl trouble? Now that I'm responsible for your moral guidance...
No, nothing like that. I picked something up on the plane.
Oh, that suits you. Very raffish. You'll fit right in here.
Yes, I think you'll find this place amusing. I mean, your father did. It has all the things that you can't find in England anymore. Oh, have you had a bull shot?
No.
Waiter,
sir.
3 bull shots, please.
Right away.
I've invited Ballantyne Morgan, though I suspect he's the most frightful bull.
Yes, his family own a bank. At least I think they do. I've asked the question, but it's so hard to listen to his answers. Here we are.
The gang's all here.
This is Ballantyne Morgan.
So sorry about your father. I didn't know him personally, but from what George tells me, he was a great English gentleman.
George, what have you been telling him?
And he was an exceptional man, your father was.
Well, I never met anybody quite like him.
He refused to compromise.
Nothing but the best or go without.
I quite agree.
Never apologized, never explained. That was another one.
Yes.
Deserve everything, trust no one.
All very wise.
Never try, effort's vulgar. Things were better in the 18th century.
Dora didn't say you were coming.
Oh, she didn't know. I'm sorry to just drop in like this. My editor sent me down last minute, so.
Your editor? Did he?
Yeah, I'm here about Natalie Keene and that other little girl, Ann Nash.
To write a story?
Yes, Mom, it's a newspaper.
Camille, I just don't understand why a young woman like you would want to even dwell on such things.
Well, it could be an important story, and being from here...
I knew those children. I'm having a very hard time, as you can imagine. And to write about it? Wingate murders his children, is that what you want people to think?
Well, it can be really helpful to get information out. People come forward.
Well, I just can't have that kind of talk around me. Her children. Just don't tell me what you're doing, what you know. While you're here, I'll just pretend you're on summer break.
I just had to get away. And I thought of you. Mr. Van der Vaart said the most terrible things to me. Really, I've never heard a gentleman talk like that.
Well, strictly between ourselves, he's not really a gentleman at all. It's a charade his entire life. His real name is Norman Vater, from Wales.
Well, he adored you. Absolutely. Oh, my God. Jeremy this, Jeremy that. Every time you wrote to him, he'd read it out loud.
Like what? Anything in particular?
You sent a postcard on the day Princess Margaret got engaged to Anthony Armstrong-Jones, and you wrote to Mr. Van der Vaart,
Of the happy couple, Jeremy says. What a pity.
I'd rather hoped to marry one and seduce the other.
But it wasn't so much that as what he did with the postcards.
I'll keep this safe and sound. Add it to my little collection. Letters from the great and powerful.
He put them in a drawer.
I didn't know he kept them.
Well, he doesn't anymore. I took them when I walked out. Come on, Mrs. Station.
But that is exceedingly kind of you. Whatever would you do that for?
Some of those are personal and a bit cheeky, if you don't mind my saying. And if they fell into the wrong hands, I wouldn't want you getting into trouble.
Thank you.
That really is inspiring work, and I'm delighted that our libraries are able to honor the writers who created it. Just as inspiring are the talents, ambitions, and inquisitiveness of our USC students. Our students inspire me and everyone in our libraries every day of every year. We have many students with us this evening, and I encourage you to talk with them and hear their stories, including the volunteers of the USC Hellenes, who once again have given up a very, very valuable Saturday night to support our libraries and help all of us enjoy a memorable evening. And the inspiring student whom I'm about to invite to the stage. Miss Zaria O'Neill is a senior, double majoring in public relations and narrative studies with a minor in dramatic arts. Why not? Zaria is a Renaissance scholar, a distinction reserved for undergraduates who excel in at least 2 widely disparate fields of study. She's also a recipient of the USC Presidential Scholarship and the Bitzer Family Scholarship for Accomplishment in the Humanities. Zaria was born and grew up in the British Virgin Islands before coming to USC. And this spring, she's going to join the ranks of the many Trojan alumni who are out in the world and forever finding new ways to make it better. As one of our student staff members in the George E. Isaacs Dean Suite here in Doheny Library, Zaria has been an enthusiastic, smart, and diligent colleague to all of us. She has experienced our libraries as a student, as a researcher, and as someone who helps fellow Trojans make their own discoveries in our libraries. And I've invited her to join us tonight and share her story of her time at USC and with the USC Libraries. Please join me in welcoming Trojan Senior Zaria O'Neill.
Hello, everyone. As the dean said, I'm a senior here at USC, and I look this good every time I come to the library. I'm serious. That girl shrouded in a USC hoodie and black leggings guzzling down espresso that you may have seen earlier, not me. I just have one of those faces. I want to start by thanking you for getting out of bed today, for dressing up, for coming here, and most of all, because you're all being so good right now, smiling while this photographer takes photos of you between bites. We're taking them because you're gorgeous. The second thing I want to say is that I am not here to ask you for anything. Why the looks? What, you see a student that you've never seen before come up here at a fundraiser and compliment you and wink at the dean and assume that I want something? Man, you guys are jaded. I'm here to tell you a story. A story in 4 parts. Freshman year, a hot Sunday in October. My 2 best friends and I huddled in one of Levy Library's group study rooms. Among us, we hold the early shards of majors in public relations and narrative studies, cinema and media, and political science. This is the only time that we get to spend together, just the 3 of us, and it's mostly in silence. Levy Library, study room 9E, every single week. We grew closer and closer, so close, in fact, that those 2 friends started dating at the end of the year. Me? Still single, but acing all of my classes, so who's really the winner here, guys? Sophomore year. One Tuesday after a class, I'm rushing up the Levy Library stairs 2 by 2 to meet with the librarian about my research paper. I had not found any sources and was prepared to leave the meeting twice as confused as before. I left with not only a full page of articles, personal essays, and dissertations to use for the paper, but a thesis, a research guide, and possible interview questions. I checked my email every day for weeks after, waiting for a $50 consulting charge on my student bill. Nothing. Why? Because it's what they do here. Junior year. The 20-square-mile island my family lives on is devastated by Hurricane Irma. I have to find an on-campus job if I want to eat or keep living in my apartment. One night, I send my resume into an open position at the Dean's Suite in Doheny Libraries. A month later, I show up for an interview just down the hall from here, and I keep showing up every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the next 2 years. Senior year. After an 8:30 a.m. class full of far too many sweet but loud freshman faces, I run across McCarthy Hall to Doheny, slump down in the book stacks, and cry. This was the first place I thought to come. I'm not going to pretend that the library is someplace where we all come and hold hands and sing Kumbaya. But if you look around on any given day, you'll see something far more interesting. 4 roommates squatting in front of a laptop like they've just discovered fire. Some kid getting the only sleep he'll get this week on a couch. A group project that is on the verge of falling apart. One that's just coming together. Someone reserving a study room for a phone interview with a Fortune 500 company, then reserving that same study room to call their mom and tell her the good news. To quote one of the many cinematic masterpieces available in our libraries, MTV Cribs, "This is where the magic happens." Yes, students read here, take class here, and research here. But we also sleep here. We eat here. We cry here. We laugh, too loud, I've been told, here. This isn't always a treasure trove of dreams and learning, though it is that most days. But the libraries are always a place where students can congregate, discuss, learn, and be safe. Do you know how many of those places exist in the world? These libraries touch the lives of every student that walks through this university. They're not just buildings with books inside. They are living, breathing homes. But you can find many books here. Books that within them hold definitions like this. Fundraiser, noun, an event held to generate financial support for a charity or other enterprise. I know I said I wouldn't ask you for anything. But I'm just asking you to ask yourself, why not? I know the value of $1. Trust me, I've eaten dry ramen noodles for lunch twice this week. Some of you have kids with tuitions to be paid, other things to take care of, and you don't always have it. But when you do, why not here? Why not to an organization that cares so much about providing for its students that it literally rolls out a red carpet? Why not give to a place where students of every kind assemble? Why not to a place where you can walk into it and say, yeah, I was a part of this? Why not here? And why not tonight? I care about how much this place has become a part of my story. After I leave the stage, I'm going to visit another book, that really big book out there by the bar, the Book of Wishes, to pledge a donation to USC Libraries. And I hope you do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed dinner with your guests. I sure enjoyed walking around the room and getting a chance to talk with most of you. And it really is a delight for me to be able to do that during the dinner break. And it's great to see so many friends and supporters of our libraries. And if you've been out in the main hall, you've noticed that our thermometer has reached the top. And we have not only reached our goal, but we have surpassed our goal. Thanks to all of you, we set our goal at 30,000, and we are now over 50. But I see Mark Todd walking into the room. In fact, we may now be at $60,000. Thank you, Mark. So before I start the second part of the program, I'd like to offer a really special thank you to Zaria, who shared her story with us before dinner. Zaria, when I was talking to people, they said, I laughed, I cried. I mean, what better for a student in dramatic arts? That's exactly what you want. We're really going to miss you when you graduate, and I'm glad that Scripture can be something of an early going away party to show our appreciation for your work and our admiration for your accomplishments. And over the 2 years that I've worked with you in the Dean Suite, you really are a shining example of the scholarly and ambitious Trojan spirit. And I know that your peers, your university, and your libraries are so really, really proud of you. Thank you so much. So I'm soon going to invite Scripture Selection Committee Chair Howard Rodman to the stage to announce this year's Scripture winners. First, though, I'd like to share more examples of our finalists' work, this time for film adaptation. Black Panther is among the earliest superheroes of African descent to appear in the pages of Marvel Comics. I'm glad that Scripture is recognizing this thoughtful, exciting, and important appearance of the Black Panther and the world of Wakanda in an adapted film. And as so many of my staff will tell you, I have taken to saying, Wakanda forever! Can You Ever Forgive Me presents a conundrum for me as the Dean of your libraries. I find myself praising the exceptional and deserving writing, but it's about a story of a literary forger who sells fake letters and steals from librarians. And yet it's a Scripture finalist. The Death of Stalin, our second 2019 film finalist based upon a work of graphic fiction, applies a frenzied satirical style to the inscrutable bureaucracy of Soviet Russia. If Beale Street Could Talk adapts the classic James Baldwin novel with delicacy and precision, experimenting with the passage of time while charting a story of justice, faith, and family. And Leave No Trace is a story of solitude and attachment, emotional endurance and physical survival, and making the most difficult decisions about how to live a life. With the writers, authors, and everyone who helped create these moving and captivating stories, please stand so that we can recognize your talent, and thank you for sharing it with us. Congratulations to our film finalists. Now, let's enjoy some examples of their work.
Dead. Speak. I'm standing in your house, serving justice to a man who stole your vibranium and murdered your people. Justice your king couldn't deliver.
I don't care that you brought Claw. Only reason I don't kill you where you stand is because I know who you are. Now, what do you want?
I want the throne.
Hey, you, the tuna.
Y'all sitting up here comfortable. Must feel good. It's about 2 billion people all over the world that looks like us, but their lives are a lot harder. Wakanda has the tools to liberate them all.
And what tools are those?
Vibranium. Your weapons.
Our weapons will not be used to wage war on the world. It is not our way to be judge, jury, and executioner for people who are not our own.
Not your own. But didn't life start right here on this continent? So ain't all people your people?
I am not king of all people. I am king of Wakanda.
Can you keep a secret?
I've no one to tell. All my friends are dead.
Quite by accident, I find myself in a rather criminal position.
I can't fathom what criminal activity you could possibly involve in, except a crime of fashion, of course.
I mean, embellishing documents, if you will.
Are you forging checks?
No, literary letters by prominent writers.
Not checks, not money, just letters.
You're not understanding the world of elite, collectible, literary artifacts.
I suppose not. But how thrilling to be forging pieces of paper that go where? Libraries.
No, I am selling to collectors.
How much are you getting for them?
I don't know why I told you. It's a waste of a secret. I should have gone out there and gotten a rock and told the rock, because I'd get a better response.
Who else have you told about this?
You're not the only one without friends.
We need to be strong and never afraid.
Yeah, well, I wasn't afraid. Now I am afraid.
No, don't be, because if any harm...
God, I actually can't believe you said that again.
Quick, the bus is back!
Come on!
America, Stalin is invincible. The boss has shipped death back to the salt mine.
What's happening? This is impossible. And wonderful. Appointing.
What is it, Chief? Maybe he's appointing his successor. Do you think? Maybe not.
Let's see if you want.
It's a painting. It's the painting. He's pointing at the painting.
Hold on. You know what he's saying? He is saying, I am the lamb.
Huh?
I am the lamb, and you, my children, have given me life.
Yeah! Or the lamb is the people, and the milk is socialism.
Maybe he's the milk.
That child is coming. It's your grandchild. I don't understand you. It's your grandchild. What difference does it make how he gets here? The child ain't got nothing to do with that. Ain't none of us got nothing to do with that. That child. That child.
That child. That child. That child.
Is it dangerous to move the pawn in front of the king?
As long as you castle.
It's not a drill. He's got him.
Good. Stand up. Still. Hands on the back of your head. Hey, still. Don't move. Anything on you that's gonna hurt me?
Just the knives.
After watching that, I have to say I do not envy the Scripter Selection Committee their work of choosing one television adaptation and one film adaptation from among the field of accomplished and admirable finalists. I don't envy them, but I know that they're up to the task. And one reason why I know they're up to the task is because they have a wonderful leader. Chairing that committee, as he has done for several years now, is USC professor and past president of the Writers Guild of America West, Howard Rodman. Yeah. Howard has been more than a steadfast friend to Scripter, to me, and to our libraries. I believe, in fact, I know, that he has said yes to every single request I've made of him. And he's either chaired or co-chaired the selection committee during my entire 11 and a half years as dean. In fact, before the evening started, I got him to commit to chairing the committee for next year. Yay! Now, of course, Howard could always say no, and I can't tell you how tremendously appreciative I am of his generosity and his good grace. Howard is a screenwriter and novelist who sits on the National Film Preservation Board. He's chaired the writing division of the USC School of Cinematic Arts and served as artistic director for the Sundance Institute Screenwriting Labs. In 2013, the French government named Howard a Knight of the Order of Arts and Letters. And Scripter is the only time, so far the only time, I get to introduce a knight, so I like to take full advantage of that privilege. This year is particularly special and a particularly busy one for Howard because his new novel, The Great Eastern, will be published by Penguin Books in June. Please join me in welcoming knight, screenwriter, author, USC professor, and great friend, Sir Howard Rodman.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Catherine. I like the guy you describe a lot better than that sullen face that stares back at me in the morning when I shave. So, thank you, Dean Quinlan. Good evening, everyone. Adapting a written work to the screen is at once an act of devotion and an act of betrayal. For Ruth Power-Jabvala, who adapted Henry James' The Golden Bowl and E.M. Forster's Howard's End and A Room with a View, the art of adaptation starts with deep memory, reading the book again and again and again, and ends with willed amnesia. She has an absolute refusal to look at the book while she's writing the screenplay. For John Huston, who adapted Dashiell Hammett's Maltese Falcon, the art of adaptation was far more literal. And I quote Mr. Huston, "You simply take apart 2 copies of the book, paste the pages, and cross out what you don't like." For John Huston and those like him, adaptation is what you judiciously choose to leave out. But it's always a transformation. But adaptation is, in one crucial aspect, different than most of the transformations we know. It refuses to consume itself. The caterpillar becomes a butterfly, the lump of coal becomes a diamond, and then no caterpillar, no coal. But however ecstatic or dismal the adaptation, the book still remains. The French crime writers Boileau and Narcejac wrote the deliriously pulpy novel D'Entre des Morts, Among the Dead, subsequently retitled Sueur Froide, Cold Sweats. I guess they thought it would sell better. It was translated into English by Geoffrey Sainsbury as The Living and the Dead, which was in turn translated by Samuel Taylor and Alfred Coppel into a screenplay, which in turn was translated by Alfred Hitchcock into the film we now know as Vertigo. The film's deeply ingrained in our consciousness, yet the novel lives on, undiminished, intact, and undeniably pulpy. We are here tonight surrounded on each shelf by the glorious evidence of what remains and what persists, even as the adaptations take on lives of their own. The adaptation is not a death. Rather, as Jeff Bezos would put it, it's a complexifier. One is told that the later seasons of Game of Thrones are adaptations of novels that George R.R. Martin hasn't quite written yet. This object here is a Cliff's Notes to Gravity's Rainbow, except that there is no Cliff Notes to Gravity's Rainbow. This is a prop from a film. The membrane between what's fiction and what's adaptation of fiction is very, very porous. Imagine, if you will, the moment when Susan Orlean found that the film adaptation of her book, The Orchid Thief, wasn't really about an orchid thief anymore, that it was no longer called The Orchid Thief, but was instead called Adaptation, and that she, Susan, was a character in it. Now imagine the second half of that phone call when she learned that the character Susan Orlean would be played by Meryl Streep. Yet Susan Orlean still exists, separate from Meryl Streep, at least I think so, and the inspired lunacy of adaptation still exists on better streaming services everywhere, and The Orchid Thief remains on these shelves, untouched by all of the above, untouched yet enriched at one and the same time. Which brings us back, as everything does, to the library. To quote Susan Orlean, "All the things that are wrong in the world seem conquered by a library's simple, unspoken promise. Here I am, please tell me your story. Here is my story, please listen. The library is a gathering pool of narratives and of the people who come to find them. It's where we can glimpse immortality. In the library, we can live forever." I'd like to thank my friends and colleagues who served on this year's Scripter Selection Committee. Our choices grow more challenging every year, and I would invite the members of the Selection Committee to stand so that we can thank you for your thoughtful contributions to the Scripter and the libraries. I'd also like to acknowledge all the finalist authors and screenwriters in the room this evening. First, for television, Tom Rob Smith for the episode The Man Who Would Be Vogue, from The Assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story, and author Maureen Orth for the nonfiction book Vulgar Favors, Andrew Cunanan, Gianni Versace, and the Largest Failed Manhunt in U.S. History. Bruce Miller and Kira Snyder for the episode Holly from The Handmaid's Tale, and author Margaret Atwood. Dan Futterman and Ali Salim for the episode 9/11 from The Looming Tower, and author Lawrence Wright. David Nichols for the episode Bad News from Patrick Melrose, based on the series of novels by Edward St. Aubin. Marty Noxon for the episode Vanish from Sharp Objects, and author Gillian Flynn. And Russell T. Davies for A Very English Scandal, author John Preston. Congratulations to our finalists for television adaptation. And for film, screenwriters Joe Robert Cole and Ryan Coogler for Black Panther, based on the character created by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. Screenwriters Nicole Holofcener and Jeff Whitty, and author Lee Israel for Can You Ever Forgive Me? Screenwriters Armando Iannucci, Ian Martin, and David Schneider for The Death of Stalin, based on the graphic novel by Fabienne Nury and Thierry Robin. Screenwriter Barry Jenkins and author James Baldwin for If Beale Street Could Talk. And screenwriters Deborah Granick and Anne Rossellini for Leave No Trace, based on the novel My Abandonment by author Peter Rock. Congratulations to all of our 2019 film finalists. And now, if Dean Quinlan will return to the stage, and if Scripter co-founder Glenn Sonnenberg will join us, it's time to announce our winners.
You enjoyed that.
Yeah. This one says television. I'm very glad it's labeled so that I won't announce La La Land. And the winners of the 31st Annual USC Libraries Scripter Award for Television Adaptation are John Preston and Russell T. Davis for A Very English Scandal. Both of our winning television writers are in the UK this weekend and could not be with us. I'm grateful, however, that earlier Russell T. Davis sent us a video greeting.
Hello, Scripture Awards, and thank you. What an honour, what a very great surprise up against such brilliant opposition. That is wonderful. Thank you. Thank you to everyone. Thank you especially to John Preston, my colleague and co-conspirator and a fine writer and journalist and such a witty man for providing such a brilliant source book for me to work from. Thank you to the cast, obviously, and thank you to those two men in history, Jeremy Thorpe and Norman Scott, for being so mad and so fascinating, and I hope so forgiven by all of us now by the passing of time. Thank you very much.
I think that's the first acceptance speech we've had here that's portrait rather than landscape. And this year for film, the 2019 USC Libraries Scripter Award goes to film. Author Peter Rock, screenwriters Deborah Granick and Anne Rossellini for Leave No Trace. Peter Rock is with us tonight. Congratulations so much. You're more than welcome. This is yours. Wait. Is that mine? Yeah, there you go.
Thank you very much. I've never won anything before. I tied this tie tonight. When I wrote this book, I finished it about 12 years ago, and I was far from thinking about it ever becoming a film. I was so anxious about my first daughter being born, and that's really the subtext of the book. So I want to thank Ida, my daughter, who's now about to turn 12. And I want to thank Linda Reisman and Ann Harrison, who about the same time decided that it could be turned into a film, and that's just how long it took. So various people came and went, and since then, about 5 years ago, Deborah Granick and Anne Rossellini and I walked through Forest Park in Portland, Oregon, and talked about possibilities. And so I want to deeply thank them for the heart and the inspiration they brought into making a great film. A lot of the things they did were mystifying and infuriating to me. And I'll never understand it, but I do appreciate their work in making a beautiful film. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, and congratulations also to Deborah Granick and Anne Rossellini, who couldn't be here tonight. We're happy to accept this on their behalf. It says we return to our seats, and Dean Quinlan, you conclude the program.
I clean up.
Oh, please.
Thank you, Howard and Glenn, and congratulations to our 2019 USC Libraries Scripter Award winners. Congratulations once more to Ex Libris Award honoree George Isaacs. To Mark, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and to all of you to help celebrate this evening. I'd also like to thank all of you for your generosity in helping us not only reach our goal, but surpass our goal. You know you have set a new standard for subsequent scripters, and if you complain, you did it to yourselves. I would also like to point out that the bar remains open, as the risk of sounding a little greedy, as does the Book of Wishes, where I invite you to help us support all of our remarkable Trojan students like Zaria. My warmest thanks to all of you for making this such a memorable and meaningful year, and I look forward to seeing you next year to celebrate Scripter 32. And I believe it is not yet 10 p.m. Good evening. Thank you.